The gun captain watches the periscope wake at 0645 hours on December 7, 1941. Gunner's mate William Tanner stands at number 3 gun aboard USS Ward, tracking a small submarine attempting to follow USS Antares into Pearl Harbor. The submarine is 45 feet long, too small to be any American vessel, clearly attempting to penetrate the harbor entrance while trailing the supply ship. Ward has been patrolling the entrance since 0300 hours on this quiet Sunday morning. The crew is tired, the watch routine, and until 3 minutes ago, nothing suggested this day would be different from any other patrol. But at 0637, Ward's sonar detected the submarine. At 0640, the captain ordered general quarters. At 0645, Tanner will fire the first American shot of World War II, a 3-inch shell that will strike the submarine's conning tower and send it to the bottom with all hands. In 90 minutes, the warning Ward radios to Pearl Harbor will still be under evaluation when the first Japanese bombs fall on Battleship Row. The shot that should have prevented surprise will be ignored, delayed, or disbelieved while the attack Ward tried to warn against unfolds with devastating success. The destroyer that fired the first shot will demonstrate that sometimes being right and being believed are different things, that institutional inertia can overwhelm evidence, and that the cost of ignoring warnings from those tasked with providing them can be measured in battleships sunk, aircraft destroyed, and over 2,000 Americans dead. USS Ward was a Wicks-class flush-deck destroyer, commissioned in 1918 for World War I service that arrived too late to see combat. The Wicks-class specifications reflected the destroyer requirements of late World War I. Displacement: 1,247 tons standard. Length: 314 feet 4 inches. Beam: 30 feet 11 inches. Draft: 9 feet 10 inches. The design emphasized mass production over innovation, simple construction, standardized equipment, rapid building time. Over 100 Wicks-class destroyers were commissioned between 1918 and 1921. Armament: 4 4-inch 50 caliber guns, 1 3-inch 23 caliber anti-aircraft gun, 12 21-inch torpedo tubes. The 4-inch guns were the main battery, capable of engaging surface targets or providing shore bombardment. The 3-inch gun was ineffective against modern aircraft, but adequate against observation aircraft and reconnaissance planes of the era. The torpedo tubes were Mark 8 launchers, the standard destroyer armament for attacking capital ships. Power plant: 2 boilers, feeding 2 Curtiss turbines producing 27,000 horsepower total. Maximum speed: 35 knots. Range: 3,900 nautical miles at 15 knots. The ships were fast but thirsty. At maximum speed, endurance was measured in hours rather than days. Crew: 114 officers and men when fully manned. Ward was laid down at Mare Island Navy Yard in May 1918, launched in June, and commissioned in July. World War I ended in November before Ward could deploy to European waters. She served briefly in post-war operations, then was decommissioned in July 1921 as part of the mass reduction in naval forces following the armistice. For 20 years, Ward sat in reserve at San Diego. Mothballed with hundreds of other destroyers, the Navy maintained a strategic reserve but did not actively operate. The ships deteriorated from lack of maintenance, machinery corroded, systems degraded, hulls weakened from lack of preservation. By 1941, most of the mothballed destroyers were considered scrap metal, suitable only for parts recovery or disposal. But the outbreak of war in Europe created demand for escort vessels. Britain requested American destroyers for convoy protection under Lend-Lease. The 50 oldest destroyers were transferred to Britain in exchange for base rights. Other destroyers were recommissioned for expanded American patrols as the Navy prepared for potential war. Ward was recommissioned in January 1941, assigned to inshore patrol duty in Hawaii, and given minimal refurbishment to make her marginally operational. The crew was largely reservists, men activated for expanding peacetime Navy who had minimal training and no combat experience. The commanding officer, Lieutenant William Outerbridge, had assumed command on December 5, 1941. Having been aboard barely 48 hours when the patrol began, he was an experienced naval officer, but new to the ship and unfamiliar with the crew. The mission on December 7th was routine: patrol the entrance to Pearl Harbor, observe shipping, report anomalies. The defensive measures around Pearl Harbor included submarine nets across the channel, patrol boats outside the entrance, and requirement that all vessels entering harbor be identified and authorized. The system was designed to prevent submarine infiltration, but had never been tested against determined attack. At 0357 hours, the minesweeper USS Condor reported sighting periscope near harbor entrance. The report went to 14th Naval District Headquarters but generated no immediate response. Periscope sightings were common, usually proven to be false alarms. Whales, debris, optical illusions. The standard procedure was investigate and report, not assume enemy contact without confirmation. At 0637 hours, Ward's sonar operator reported submarine contact. Outerbridge ordered the ship to general quarters and moved to investigate. At 0640, Ward observed small submarine attempting to follow USS Antares, a repair ship entering harbor. The submarine was running submerged with periscope showing, clearly attempting to use Antares as cover to penetrate the channel. The submarine was Type A midget submarine. Japanese design intended for harbor penetration attacks. Specifications: length 46 feet, beam 6 feet, displacement 46 tons, crew 2, armament 2 18-inch torpedoes. The midget submarines were transported to attack position by larger I-class submarines, released several miles from target, and were expected to penetrate harbors, attack capital ships, and if possible escape or scuttle. Recovery was not expected. The missions were essentially suicide attacks. 5 midget submarines had been deployed as part of the Pearl Harbor attack plan. They were supposed to penetrate the harbor during the air attack battleships, and create additional chaos. The attack plan called for them to arrive synchronized with aircraft, not 90 minutes early, but navigation errors, mechanical problems, or tactical misjudgment brought at least one submarine to harbor entrance before the air attack began. Outerbridge made immediate decision. The submarine was enemy, was attempting unauthorized entry, and would be attacked. At 0645 hours, he ordered Ward to ram the submarine and fire. Ward accelerated to flank speed. Number 1 and Number 3 guns opened fire at approximately 100 yards range. Number 1 gun missed. Number 3 gun, manned by gunner's mate Tanner and his crew, fired at point-blank range. The 3-inch shell struck the submarine's conning tower at the waterline, penetrated, and exploded inside. The submarine immediately began flooding. Ward passed over the submarine and dropped depth charges set for shallow detonation. The explosions completed destruction of the already sinking submarine. At 0653 hours, Outerbridge transmitted report to 14th Naval District Headquarters. We have attacked, fired upon, and dropped depth charges upon submarine operating in defensive sea area. The message was clear, specific, and represented first hostile action of the Pacific War for United States forces. The message reached headquarters at 0712 hours. The duty officer, Lieutenant Commander Harold Kaminsky, received the report and began evaluation. Ward's report was significant but required verification. Previous submarine contacts had been false alarms. The report came from newly commissioned officer on ship with reserve crew. The contact occurred in area where submarines were unlikely. The standard procedure was investigate before raising alert that would scramble aircraft, activate defenses, and possibly trigger false alarm that would embarrass everyone involved. Kaminsky contacted his superior, who contacted Admiral Husband Kimmel's chief of staff. The verification process took time. Additional questions were asked. Was Ward certain it was submarine? Could it have been whale or debris? Had the contact been confirmed by other ships? The bureaucratic instinct was skepticism. The institutional culture was avoiding false alarms, and the risk calculation favored caution over precipitate action. At 0758 hours, while Ward's report was still being evaluated and verified, the first Japanese aircraft appeared over Oahu. At 0755 hours, Commander Mitsuo Fuchida transmitted Tora Tora Tora. The code indicating surprise had been achieved. At 0758 hours, bombs began falling on Battleship Row. The attack Ward had warned against was underway. The submarine Ward had destroyed was confirmed enemy vessel. The skepticism that delayed response to Ward's report had allowed the air attack to achieve complete surprise. The institutional processes that prioritized verification over immediate action had failed catastrophically. The timeline documented the failure. Ward detected submarine at 0637 hours. Ward attacked and sank submarine at 0645 hours. Ward reported attack at 0653 hours. Report reached headquarters at 0712 hours. Evaluation began but was not completed before air attack started at 0755 hours. The warning provided 63 minutes notice. The institutional response consumed that time in verification procedures while the enemy was already attacking. Post-attack analysis identified multiple failures. The submarine sightings by Condor at 0357 hours were dismissed too readily. Ward's report was treated skeptically when it should have triggered immediate investigation. The radar contact at 0702 hours detecting incoming aircraft was assumed to be American B-17 bombers arriving from mainland. Each failure individually was understandable. Collectively, they allowed attack to achieve complete surprise despite multiple warning indicators. Ward's role in the attack was not finished. After confirming submarine destruction, Ward resumed patrol. When the air attack began, Ward engaged attacking aircraft with her anti-aircraft guns. The engagement was ineffective. The 3-inch gun could not track fast-moving aircraft, and the 4-inch guns could not elevate sufficiently. Ward contributed to the general anti-aircraft fire, but scored no confirmed kills. Through the day, Ward continued patrol operations, searching for additional submarines and providing security for harbor entrance. No additional submarines were detected near the entrance, though another midget submarine was later found beached on Oahu's shore, and a third was sunk by destroyer USS Monaghan inside the harbor during the attack. Ward's wartime service continued for 3 more years. She served in Pacific Theater, conducting patrol operations, escorting convoys, and participating in amphibious landings. Her most notable later action was at Leyte Gulf in October 1944, where she was hit by kamikaze and badly damaged. The ship was beyond economical repair and was scuttled by friendly fire. Ironically, one of the ships that sank Ward was USS O'Brien, commanded by William Outerbridge, Ward's former captain who had commanded her when she fired the first shot of the war. The midget submarine Ward sank remained on the bottom until 1960 when researchers located the wreck. The submarine was found in 1,200 feet of water, approximately 3 miles from Pearl Harbor entrance. The conning tower showed damage consistent with 3-inch shell penetration. The wreck was photographed and documented, but left in place as war grave for the 2 Japanese submariners who died aboard. The question of whether earlier response to Ward's warning could have prevented or mitigated the Pearl Harbor attack has been debated since December 7, 1941. If Ward's report at 0653 hours had triggered immediate alert, defensive measures could have been activated before the air attack began. Fighter aircraft could have been scrambled. Anti-aircraft batteries could have been manned. Ships could have been brought to general quarters. The attack would still have occurred, but American forces would have been prepared rather than surprised. But the institutional culture of 1941 Pacific Fleet made immediate response unlikely. The peacetime Navy operated on procedures that emphasized verification, avoided false alarms, and defaulted to skepticism. The radar operators who detected incoming aircraft at 0702 hours reported the contact, but were told it was probably American bombers. The submarine contacts were treated similarly. Probably false alarm. Investigate before raising alert. The failure was not individual but institutional. Multiple people made reasonable decisions based on their understanding of probabilities and procedures. Submarine sightings were usually false. Radar contacts of incoming aircraft in morning were usually scheduled flights. Raising false alarm was a career-threatening mistake. The accumulated decisions to wait, verify, and avoid overreaction were individually defensible but collectively catastrophic. The lesson drawn from Pearl Harbor included changing institutional culture from skepticism to alertness, from avoiding false alarms to accepting false alarms as cost of maintaining readiness. Post-Pearl Harbor, anomalous contacts were treated as hostile until proven otherwise rather than assumed benign until confirmed hostile. The procedural change was recognition that cost of false alarm was trivial compared to cost of failed warning. Ward's warning was correct, timely, and ignored. The submarine was enemy, was attempting penetration, and was destroyed. The report was accurate, transmitted promptly, and received in time to make difference. But the institutional response transformed timely warning into useless information by consuming available time and verification while attack proceeded. At 0645 hours on December 7, 1941, Gunner's mate Tanner fired 3-inch shell that struck Japanese submarine and announced America's entry into World War II. The shot was heard around the world eventually, but was not heard when it mattered at Pearl Harbor headquarters. The delay between firing and believing, between reporting and acting, between warning and responding measured difference between preparedness and surprise, between defensive success and catastrophic failure. USS Ward, the destroyer that fired the first shot, demonstrated that being first means nothing if the institution receiving your report does not believe you in time to act on the information. The submarine she sank was confirmed enemy. The warning she transmitted was accurate and timely. The response she received was skeptical and delayed. The result was attack that achieved surprise despite warning that should have prevented it. The ship that fired the first shot proved that sometimes the hardest battle is not against the enemy, but against institutional inertia that dismisses warnings as probably false until proven catastrophically true. That verification procedures designed to prevent false alarms can instead prevent appropriate response to real threats. And that the cost of disbelieving those tasked with providing warnings is measured not in embarrassment from false alarms, but in lives lost when real threats are treated skeptically until too late to matter. Ward fired the shot heard eventually, but not when it needed to be heard. Warning of attack that came while the warning was still being verified. Proving that in warfare as in life, being right is insufficient when those who need to believe you have institutional reasons to doubt until doubt becomes irrelevant, because the thing you warned against is already happening.